What if the real risk isn't leaving or stepping away? What if the real risk is staying? You know that moment when the day finally quiets down and instead of relaxing, your brain gets louder? The questions start showing up. Why am I so tired? Why does my anxiety feel different than it used to? Why does my life look fine but feel off? You don't have time to think about it during the day, so it waits for you at night. This is What the Shift, the podcast for those 2 a.m. thoughts you keep trying to ignore. The ones about exhaustion, people pleasing, overfunctioning, boundaries, changing bodies, shifting identities, and the quiet realization that nothing is wrong. It just can't keep going the same way. I'm Gia Lacqua, and if it's been keeping you up at 2 a.m., it's trying to tell you something. Welcome to What the Shift. If you've been having conversations with yourself at 2 a.m., you are in the right place. Welcome back to What the Shift. I'm your host, Gia Lacqua. Today, I am so excited to welcome back my friend, Whitney Faires, to the show. Whitney is an internationally recognized leadership advisor, executive coach, and keynote speaker who helps high-achieving leaders unlock greater influence, drive meaningful impact, and lead with confidence. With 2 decades of corporate leadership experience, including building a $2.5 billion business function, Whitney understands what truly drives performance, culture, and behavior change at scale. She has advised more than 500 leaders across the globe, bringing a rare blend of executive insight and human-centered development. Her dynamic presence, practical insights, and ability to challenge and inspire make her a sought-after voice in leadership transformation. Whitney, welcome back to the show. So happy to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me. The whole focus of your podcast is right up my alley and what I've lived through in my career. So it's a pleasure to join you.
I love it. I know this is going to be such a great conversation. So, this episode is really for the woman who is quietly questioning at 2 a.m. Is this really the life that I've worked so hard for? And I know so many women who either have been there or are there and are lingering with that question of now what? So, Whitney and I come to this conversation from the same place of having the courage to pivot when the path that we were on still looked quote unquote successful. So let's start there. Whitney, I know you've had a couple of different career pivots. Talk to us about, what you went through in those moments.
Well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head where you can have all of what you've worked for and still be in this place of just being unsettled. And I say that because what I experienced was I was striving for really big roles. I started out in sales, pivoted into sales leadership, was climbing the ladder, was delivering results, was had a great team. And then I had kids and I had my daughter, and the nature of my job was I was leaving my house at 6:30 in the morning to get into the field with my people, and I would come home, based on when the schedule ended. And I could make that work and I could manage that. But as I started looking up at what was next in my career journey, the role that I had been trying so hard to achieve and was being, kind of tapped to start interviewing for, I realized that I was going to hit a really critical impasse. And that was I knew we wouldn't have another child. And I thought, this next role, I'm going to be on the road 3 to 4 days a week, at least 2 weeks a month, if not 3. And am I going to be happy in the entirety of my life, not just in my career, if I'm doing that? And I knew the answer was probably not. I probably was not going to be in a place where I was content. And so I pivoted internally into a corporate role that we could break that whole scenario down, because it was probably a year and a half of really questioning myself, the move that I had made, feeling in a lot of ways like I had quit on myself because I had opted to move sideways instead of up. That move ended up being the single-handedly greatest thing I did in my career. And it was because I had this experience. I couldn't see how it would all unfold, but it ended up becoming, as you mentioned in my bio, creating this $2.5 billion function, a global team, getting international leadership and business experience. And that served me for a while. But I had this nagging in the back of my mind about the work that I really love was with the people, was with helping people transform into the most powerful version of themselves, to find the career that they really wanted to do and to go after it. And so I got certified in coaching. I started doing all this work on the side. I had my corporate career, was very busy. And I started just coaching internally at my organization, and it led to what I would say my dream job in corporate. I was, reporting to the CFO. I had a global org health function leading leadership development, coaching and advising high achieving leaders. But I knew that my ultimate dream was starting my own company. And so that was the second major pivot. And that's a big one, to walk away from security and in having a brand. I'd been at the company 17 years to then taking the risk of having my own company. I'm almost 2 years into the journey, I guess a little over a year and a half, and I have no regrets about that decision.
Incredible. Those are two huge moves. So I want to rewind for just a second. One of the things you said is when you took a lateral move versus continuing to climb up the ladder, when you realized maybe that's not actually what I want. Scary that I know there's a lot of fear that comes up in those moments. But I want to talk about something you said, which is I felt like I was quitting on myself, which
Yes.
I think is a huge fear that keeps so many of us stuck where we are because we fear that we are going to be perceived as quitting or feel like we're letting ourselves down or other people down. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like for you and how you had to reframe that.
Well, that was the hardest part, to be honest, is not only did I take a massive pay cut, I had everybody going, I'm so surprised you made that move." And I could read between the lines. I had people saying, "Hey, when you're ready to come back to sales leadership, where you should be, give me a call." And in the function that I was starting up, I was actually working side by side with the commercial sales org. So it was now like these people suddenly were treating me like I was uh supposed to be helping them do their jobs, and I wasn't an equal. And so all of those things really made me spiral internally around that already, sense that I already had around quitting on myself. Like, they also see me as lesser. But I think in the midst of all of the change that we face, whether it's a career pivot or a family life or anything, we have to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We don't always see where it will end. We don't always see why we go on this journey, but we have to trust ourselves. And it's not about making gut moves, but it's about being really thoughtful and intentional in your decision making. And in that scenario for me, a big part of it was the reason why I pivoted wasn't just the family piece. It was also the piece that I thought to myself, if I never do anything but sales in my entire career, I'm going to wonder, like, what is on the other side? And the family piece was a catalyst to go explore that. And so I knew that it was done intentionally. I knew I wasn't quitting. So I had to really work on managing that inner narrative that I had and not letting all those comments really affect me. Easier said than done, but like anything, if we really work on it and focus on it and choose which way we're going to think, then over time we build that muscle and we drown out a lot of that self doubt.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And I know similarly, I reached a point in my career where I thought, is this really what I want? Is this really what I'm working so hard for? I was given the opportunity to potentially move to a global position and move to the UK. And for a moment, I thought, wow, what an incredible opportunity. My kids were still little. Like, this could actually be. And then I thought, to what end, right? Is this really
Mhm.
what I have been working my ass off for?
Yeah.
And is this it? Is this my goal? Is this my dream? Is this my aspiration? And the honest answer, which was hard, was no. But I had been working so hard towards this singular goal that it was hard to step back and see that there's other options on the table. And that may not be ultimately what is best for me. So I think the important point here to think about is what if the real risk isn't leaving or stepping away? What if the real risk is staying in the job that it's either no longer fulfilling us or staying in a role that no longer suits who we are or no longer aligns with where we are in our lives and our ambition at that point because we evolve whether it's motherhood, relationship, just part of who we are as we grow, we change. And so, having to reevaluate our position and what that means, it's very hard and it's very scary. So, how does Whitney go about thinking through some of these big career decisions?
Yeah. So There's a couple things I always ask myself whenever I make any career decision, even if it's just a vertical promotion. And the first thing is I ask myself, am I really going to like the work that I'm doing? We spend so much time at work, and great people get tapped for roles. At being tapped for that is the thought process isn't necessarily she going to love this job. It's not. It's like we need her to solve a problem. We need her skill sets. She'll figure it out. And that's great. It's a huge compliment. But if we don't love the work, we need to really ask ourselves, what is this opportunity giving us if it's not enjoying our day to day? The second thing I ask is this going to serve me 5 years down the road? In the case of my first pivot that we talked about, I knew that even if I didn't love the work, because I didn't really know what the work was completely, it would be an experience that would tell me where I go next in my career. It would be a skill set that I would build that would complement all the skills I already had that I would never get by staying in sales. And then the third thing I ask is what new experiences or skills will it build? And, I kind of referenced that, a moment ago, which is sometimes you say, I think I'll like the work, but there's this amazing set of skills and experiences. Maybe it's visibility to other leaders, creating more opportunities that it's worth me committing for 2 or 3 years. And I run it through that 3 question filter. But the other piece is that you referenced it. We have to really shut down this way of thinking that because something is what we wanted, it's the only place to go. And I find that with a lot of females, we hold ourselves to standards that we don't hold other people to. Whether it's, oh, we should be able to manage all the stuff at home and at work, or we should take this job because we're qualified and they want me to. We hold ourselves to standards that we would look at our team or our friend and we would say, if you don't want the job, don't go take the job. What's the worst that happens? And if someone's going to judge you for that, is this a place that you're going to be 3 to 5 years down the road? We just get so caught up, I think, in our vision that we had, and because we fought so hard for it, not wanting to let it go. But to the point at which you mentioned it, to what end? It doesn't serve us anymore.
Yeah, letting go, I think is you hit the nail on the head. It's letting go of what we've committed ourselves to because we feel like we've invested so much of our time, our energy, our resources in proving ourselves that we are
Yeah.
capable, that we are worthy, so that then to pivot away from that feels very scary. And I think an important reframe here is what if you're not pivoting away? What if you're building on top of that experience and building something greater?
Yeah. Another piece that I think is really important is that things don't have to be completely broken to have, I like to call it the silent dream. The silent the voice in the back of your head that's like, "What if I could go launch my own company and do this full time? And what if I could, go get that job?" And, we all, I believe, have some sort of a whisper in the back of our mind. And there's a million reasons we can push it aside. And I did it. And sometimes you have to push it aside because the timing isn't right. But I think it's just so critical that we acknowledge that we can be happy in our jobs. We can love our boss. We can enjoy the work that we do, but still there is that voice. And I encourage people to just pause and look inward. Give it some time and look inward. What is the catalyst for that silent dream that just won't go away? And what is it that's keeping us stuck here? When I left my organization to start my own company, so many people said, "You just seem so happy in the job. I thought this is like what you wanted to do." And I said, "It is, and I am." I mean, it was my favorite job ever in corporate, the last role I did. My favorite team ever in the sense that we just were firing all cylinders. We had great camaraderie. We were doing phenomenal work. But that didn't mean that I should stay forever. And so it doesn't have to feel broken. You just have to listen to the voice that's pulling at you and really take time to explore. And that exploration could take 2 days and it could take 2 years. And that's okay. It doesn't mean if it's still there, you should just ignore it and keep moving forward.
It's such an important point because at the end of the day, you're allowed to outgrow your definition of success. And
Absolutely.
I think we get so wedded to one definition of success that we had ingrained in our head. And so, what if success doesn't end because you failed? What if it ends because you've evolved and your definition of success has evolved.
Yeah. You know, the big deal breaker for me when finally said I have to stop this way of thinking and I have to move towards taking steps towards building my own company and doing this thing was one night I was sitting in bed with my daughter. She was probably I was trying to think about this. She was probably 7 at the time and 7 or 8, and we were reading and we got done reading, and when I put her to bed I always tell my kids, hey, if no one believes in you but yourself, that's all that matters. If you believe in yourself, it is enough. Go dream the crazy dreams and build the plan and bet on yourself. That's how big things happen. And I don't know what it was. Looking at her in that moment, even though I'd said it a million times, this light bulb went off within me that said, oh my gosh, I am giving this advice to an 8-year-old. And here I am, almost 40 years old, and I'm not taking my own advice. Yet I have all of this success that is in my rearview mirror. Of anyone who should believe in themselves, it should be me. But I'm telling an 8-year-old to do this. And I just, in that moment, I realized how backwards that thinking was, that we give this advice to other people, but we're unwilling to hear it ourselves. And it was that moment that I realized, because I had talked to my husband and my kids about wanting to start a company and wanting to make this pivot, but truthfully, it felt selfish to leave security, to leave something safe, to do my own thing. And I realized in that moment that the example that I was setting was so poor. Dreaming about it and not doing it. And so that was the pivot point for me, for which I said, I have to figure out the timeline and the way forward to go do what I ultimately wanna do.
Isn't it so funny that what motherhood does to us, and it's just one of the many lessons that it teaches us, right? Because 'Cause we're teaching them these life lessons, and at the same time, we're either teaching or healing or reparenting
Yeah.
ourselves. I mean, that's a whole other episode we can have, but it is, you gave me the chills with that story. I absolutely love that because they follow what you do, not what you
Yeah.
say, just like your team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all what it's the example that we set through our actions versus the words that we say, because it's easy to say, "Hey, go do the thing," but then I mean, my kids had asked me, they were like, "When are you gonna start your own business? When are you gonna write a book?" And every time I was like, in my head, I felt a little sense of anxiety thinking, "I've put this out there, but I'm too afraid to go do it. Something's off here."
Yes, and it's actually interesting that you say that because they say once you say it out loud to somebody else or once you write it down, that wild dream, that wild, the goal, the aspiration that you have is the first step to making it a reality because now you've reflected it to somebody else and they're going to reflect that back to you. Or you wrote it down and you keep coming back to what you wrote down. So externalizing it, I think, is a really great place to start.
Absolutely.
Whitney, I want to go back to something else that you talked about, which is the mom guilt. I know this is really something that a lot of mothers with careers struggle with. And so you talk about the guilt that women experience when trying to balance work and life, which is quite honestly an impossible balance, and feeling that we are constantly falling short in one area or another. I've been there. I know pretty much every other working mother has been there. How
Yeah.
have you managed through that?
This is a lesson I wish it did not take me so many years to figure out. I think there are 2 forms of guilt I've had to learn to manage. The first one, and probably the easiest one, is the external guilt of the commentary that comes. And I want to say, I believe these comments are meant in a very well intended manner. But when you go to the school function and people are like, oh, I'll send you pictures. You're not going to be at the class party because you're going to be traveling. Yeah, your daughter told me, and I'll send you pictures. I'm so sorry you're going to miss it. Or, the family members that are like, I don't know how you do that. Like, I wouldn't want to miss all this stuff. And it's meant to empathize, but we're not aligned. Like that to me doesn't equate to being a great mom. And I want to say something. You could read this on my website. My most important job in the world is raising healthy, happy, productive kids that leave the world a better place. I mean, that is my highest priority. But I don't think it needs to look like being at every class party. I don't think it means you can't ever travel for work. And I had to understand the impact those external comments had on my internal way of thinking. That's number one. The second thing is, when did we decide that everyone else should be happy and well cared for, except for us? It's such a when you stop and think about it, it's absolutely insane. And I still battle this with myself, is like, gosh, like I really should do this at home and do this at work and also mentor this person who reached out that wants help, but there's nothing left for me. It's like I just go from one thing to the next 7 days a week, and I maybe if I'm lucky I get an hour and a half a weekend to, I don't know, sit down and not think. But we allow ourselves to think this is okay. We have to take ownership of that narrative. And I've worked really hard on that. My kids deserve the best of me. My husband does, but I deserve a slice too. And they can all coexist. It doesn't have to compete every moment of every day. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, what do we really need and what do we deserve? And how do we carve out that space guilt free? Because if we aren't at our best, I mean, everyone says this, we can't give to others. But honestly, who wants to live life like that? I've lived it. I've lived life far too many years that way. And I am here to tell you, I didn't think you could live it differently. And someone told me, called me flat out. I had a coach when I was going through coach training. She was like, you could live the same life and have a completely different experience in it. And I was almost offended by that comment.
Of course
Like,
you
she and I
were.
laughed about it today. I was truly offended. Like, you think I can't do it? Like, you don't understand what the magnitude of what I'm doing personally and professionally? I was like, just went the other direction. I said, "You're gonna have to explain that to me." And
Mhm.
she explained it, and we stayed on this path for probably 2 months, little by little in my coaching sessions, and she was right. She was right because it's how I view it. It's how I manage it. It's the boundaries that I set, and you can be super successful and a great mom, caretaker, wife, whatever it may be, and still have a piece of you. It may not be quite as much as you want, but it can be a piece that makes you content.
And what do you think was the biggest belief that kept you stuck in that mindset?
Well, I can take on more and get through it easier than maybe other people, so I should. And I had that mindset before I even was pulled in a lot of directions. Like, before I was married and had a career. Well, the people with kids, they shouldn't have to do the Saturday thing because they have kids. I should do it. I should offer. And so that the I should and, well, I could do it. It's just going to be put more on me. So I'm going to go do it. I had to really break that pattern of thinking, because guilt in that thought process were totally intertwined for me. It was like, I'm gonna feel bad that I'm sitting there, having a glorious Saturday when someone has their 3 kids at home with their wife and they're working this work event instead. I should just go help them out. That's a good thing to do as a teammate. And then it, of course, only gets magnified the more and more you take on in life, whether it's professionally or personally. So, I think it's slowing down and pausing and going, why is this the best decision? And what other alternatives should I evaluate those before I say yes to everything and let my guilt really push me forward instead of, I always like to say, a lot of times there are ways of thinking makes us act by default, through habits versus by design. We have to
Mhm.
make decisions and live our life by design. Otherwise, it will run us. And when our life runs us, it's typically not so fun.
There's so much gold in what you just said, Whitney. So I want to touch upon a few things. One is having agency and having choice and recognizing that there is not one way to live life. There is not one framework, but we feel that way. When we're in it, we feel like this is it. This is the life I built. So this is the life I chose. And this is it. Like, I don't have any other options. And I've been there. I've been there where you turn around, you look around, you're like, this is what I signed up for. And you just sort of tell yourself that story that you got to suck it up. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
And, I'm very thankful that you had such an amazing coach, and this is the power of coaching to help you see that, no, there's other ways. But it is so hard to see it when you are in the thick of it. So I think that's an incredible point. The other point I want to go back to that you touched upon is really, what's your driving force? And I think we're kind of coming full circle to where we started, but is your driving force the proving? Is it pain? Is it guilt? Is it loyalty to an identity that you no longer hold, but you're stuck in? And is that what is driving you? Is that what is your fuel every day when you wake up? Or is it purpose? Is it joy? Is it impact? And I've lived both sides of that spectrum. I know you have too. And night and day.
And you hit on the identity piece, which is so critical. When's the last time you've stopped to think, what is my identity as a person? Is my identity wrapped up in being this prestigious, high value person at work who can solve any problem, who can lead, his or her team? Is my identity, mostly my children and their accomplishments? Like, what is it? And there's no right or wrong answer, none. But the question is, does that identity serve you? And I found in a lot of the hard decisions I've made, both personally and professionally, my identity is intertwined, and I'm almost like breaking up with that and being like, I got to leave you here because I'm going there. And that is, it's not really fun. And I just want to say for all those people who, kind of going back, like we are going full circle, who have that dream, who are unsettled, the path is not ever going to look clear or easy. Even if it's you can see the path clearly, it's going to feel overwhelming if you're really chasing the big thing that you want, and that doesn't have to just be in the workplace. It could be you're tired of the workplace and you want to leave that and go do something on the side and spend more time with doing whatever. But don't let that discourage you because you're stronger than you think. What's gotten you here is going to prepare you for what's next and you're going to figure it out. You just have to move forward instead of staying stuck, pushing that thought process to the back of your head every time it's like, what if I could do this? Or gosh, I can't do this much longer, but what's my way out? Sometimes it's not pushing you towards something, it's pulling you away from the thing that you're doing. And we have to listen to those both of those thoughts in our head.
Mhm. 100%. And I think once you realize that fulfillment doesn't come from optimizing the life that you have, it comes from having the courage to outgrow what you have and the strategy for building what's next. And I think the identity piece does keep people stuck because we can outgrow clothes, we can outgrow shoes, we can outgrow a car, but somehow we feel stuck or wedded to an identity that we built 10 or 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
how important is it to step back and say, is this really who I still am today? And who I want to be 5 years down the
Mhm.
road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Whitney, just before we wrap up, any other advice that you would like to leave our listeners with who might be thinking, I want to take that next step, but I'm scared?
I would get anchored in the legacy that you wanna leave. It's something that I encourage people to ask themselves regularly is, "What's a legacy that I wanna leave behind?" And that could include something personal and professional or whatever, like, there's no right or wrong answer, but I tell people all the time, our legacy will not live on any dashboard or spreadsheet or in the best title that we've had or the revenue that we drove. It won't. Someone's gonna shatter all of those things someday. Your legacy will live in the hearts and the minds of the people that you impact. And whether it's your team at work, whether it's your boss who is positively impacted by you, your children, your family, your friends, that's where your legacy lives. And so the more you can live your life to fuel that legacy is how at the end of when you're old and you're sitting there watching whatever we're going to be watching and I don't know, Gia, like 20 years, you'll be able to be like, I've done it and I'm really
Yeah.
proud
Yeah.
of what I've left behind and what I'm about to do.
Absolutely. It's great advice. And I think going back to something you said earlier too is figuring out what is most important to you. What do you need to have? What do you need to experience? Because I think many of us feel like we have to choose. I have to be a good mother or a good employee. And I think it's really how do we integrate what we need holistically in our life? And it can be both. Is it going to be perfect? No. But I think that's where your point comes into taking the next step. And we like certainty. We like being able to see the path. A lot of type A personalities. I get it. I am one, like being able to know what's ahead. And that's not always the case. So it's how do we take that next step and have trust and faith in, to your point, we'll figure it out.
And the last thing I'd say on that, because you kind of jogged my thinking on this, is we always look at all the negative what ifs. Like, what if this doesn't work? What if I don't like it? I'd encourage you to actually look at the positive what ifs. And this is something my husband had helped me with when I was making these big decisions. He said, Whitney, I've never seen someone that has plan A, B, C, D, and E. And I have that because it's what quells my anxiety about whatever big decision I'm making. I just like to know where we're going if
Yep.
this thing all goes down. And he said, "But you never look at all the positive what ifs."
Yeah.
And it took him a while to get through it. As he likes to say, you gotta hear it from somebody else and not just me before you really listen. But it's so true when you're thinking about, gosh, like, I wanna go do this, but what if this and that? But say that on the positive side because you're probably gonna have some of that too.
100%. And I think the other thing I tell clients who are in that position is we're so used to having, to your point, 7 plans and a backup plan. I think the important thing is, and this is a really hard pivot, don't have the backup plan. Because if you don't give yourself another option, right, you're going to have to make that one work. And so I think for me,
Love
that was
that.
a big, big mindset shift when I started my own business. Like, no, because initially I was like, okay, plan B, plan C, plan. And I said, nope, there are no backup plans. This is it. And this is what is happening. And that puts you in a very different place.
Yeah, it's a great way of thinking.
Love it. Whitney, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such an incredible conversation. I so appreciate you being here. So grateful for you.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to impact your audience.
Absolutely. And so, Whitney, tell us a little bit about where our listeners can find you and learn more about the work that you do.
Yeah, you can go to my website at whitneyfaires.com. It will be in the show notes. And follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Instagram is Whitney_Ferris, but I have new leadership programs launching. I offer a variety of advisory and coaching options. And I love speaking to organizations and associations on magnetic leadership. So happy to chat with anybody who wants to explore any of those services.
If this landed, share it with a friend who's having the same thoughts at 2 a.m. And if you want more conversations like this, stick around because this is where we make shift happen. Take care. All right, shifters, before you jump back into your day or back into your thoughts, if something from this conversation stuck with you, that's not random. A shift doesn't happen because you push harder. It happens when you stop ignoring the thing that keeps coming back. So here's your only ask. If this episode made you think of someone, send it to them. That's how these conversations are spread. Quietly, honestly, person to person. This is What the Shift.